Hi, this is John Ryan with Team Handball News, and joining me from Michigan is the one and the only Joey Williams of America's top handball club, Detroit Handball. Joey, how are you doing?
Thank you for that introduction, John. Anytime I can talk to the fourth best English speaking handball news source is a good day. So I'm doing great.
Fourth best? Let's see. We
That
got
might
the
be
EA.
generous.
What?
That might be generous. Top 10, your top 10.
Oh, I'm down on EHF website. Probably number one, maybe. I don't know.
I won't
IHF?
reveal my ranking, but no, just suffice to say I'm excited to see you, John. We go back and
Yeah.
always nice to.
Yeah, and it's great to talk to you. I think we first met electronically anyway. You're all excited about going to the goalkeeper camp. When was that? How long ago was that?
Doesn't feel that long ago, but I guess it was quite a bit ago. I think I was a freshman in college, so oh no, I guess sophomore, so 18, 19 years old. So I don't want to reveal my age here, but it was at least half a decade ago. So
Yeah,
great
yeah.
experience.
So and you wrote a nice little article on that, and I think you've been on the podcast a couple times, and um, big handball fan. I'm all in for other big handball fans. We're not a huge community here in the U.S., but we're trying to grow that. I know you've been busy with law school, but were you able to watch some of the quarterfinal Champions League matches this week?
I could only catch some of the highlights, and then I have some colleagues from a few of those teams who are sending me some videos, just trying to make me jealous that they had fans in the stands and that they were watching some high level handball in person. So I only catched some snippets, but I want to give a shout out to the other English speaking podcast here, the Uninformed Handball
Uh-huh.
Hour, and to you guys. Great calls. That's all I'm going to say. Nice calls on those results. It's the curse of the handball podcast, I suppose. So, just one request for you fellas, if you're listening, please do not ever select Detroit to win any games. Please, just do us that favor.
Well, you must be busy if all you're catching is snippets of three great matches. I mean, they were, three great quarterfinal second legs that had, were in doubt until the very, final minutes for the most part. I mean, they were games up until at least 5 or 10 minutes to go, and one went down to the wire. I'm telling you, that both the Alberg Flensburg game and the Nantes uh, Veszprém game, they were outstanding. But
Absolutely.
wow, so you've been keeping busy. I mean, and you've kind of ceded some of the podcast responsibilities on the shooting straight to Max. You've been so busy um, with your club, with law school, and then you're also taking the European Handball Managers course, right?
I'm doing that as well. Yeah. So, but you know what, John? It's very grateful because everything I'm doing, I'm like having a lot of fun doing, and I'm very passionate about it. So it doesn't feel like work, which at times is a good and a bad thing, but life is good. Life is good.
Yeah. All right. Well, the purpose for this getting back to chatting is uh, I've been seeing all the activity on social media with what Detroit Handball Club is up to, and um, the you guys are very active there. But I wanted to kind of get more into the detail as to what you guys have been doing, what you guys have accomplished since an article I wrote back in 2019, just as you were getting started. You kind of had like a little video that you had put out there, and um, starting a new club. It kind of reminded me of my experiences with starting a new club. And I wrote down some things that I saw from my earlier experience, the challenges as far as building a handball club, and I came up with 4 hurdles to cross, which I think you are either you've hurdled the hurdle, or you are certainly in the process of crossing a hurdle. And there was 4 hurdles. We'll go through each of them. The first hurdle was recruiting players. And I see on social media, I think last night you had a posting that said 6-on-6, Americans, all Americans playing. And I was like, oh, wow, that's pretty good, because part of the underlying part of my article was, a lot of times it's a lot of expats. So give me some feedback on where you started out in terms of athletes associated with your club, and where you are now, and how that's grown in terms of the last year and a half or so.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, I'm glad you do see our social media posts. So that's
How could I miss them?
incredible validation for all of our work. Um, yeah, and I mean, in the case of last night, that was a low showing for practice for us, which is an incredible problem to have, because we had maybe 12 to 14 guys show up, and for us at the beginning of practice, we're like, where is everyone? So recruiting has probably been, for whatever reason, one of our biggest strengths, especially with Americans. So from the very beginning, we had, I mean, at the most, 30% um, expats, 70% American born and raised athletes. So that's been great. And as we've gone, as we've progressed, that proportion has significantly tilted in favor of American born guys. So we have a lot of former baseball players, former lacrosse players, and just dudes who are athletes. So as of right now, I think if I were to back of the napkin math here, 90% Americans, and they all know how to play. Thanks to those 10% of people who have that handball IQ, and those 10% of people who are incredibly passionate and who are willing to share their love of the game with those guys. And oh my God, if you could see these Americans play, John.
How did it start out though? Did you ever have one of those practices that I kind of I had a few practices where like maybe 2 or 3 people showed up, and it's just such a demoralizing thing. Did you have a few practices like that?
I've had more than a few of like that. It's that's the price of, I mean, for lack of a better term, price of doing business for trying to do something like this. But the positive thing though is, John, I knew that going in, and so I said, okay, I know that there's gonna be practices where I just set up the nets, put the balls on the ground, and stand there like this, and nobody shows up, or 2 or 3 people show up, or I'm there and then somebody straggles on. That's part of it. You just have to accept that if you're starting a new club, that you're gonna look like an absolute clown some days, but other days not so much.
Yeah. What started to turn things around for you, and how were you able to get uh, you know what were the tools that you used for recruiting?
It's a good question. The An interesting thing that happened was right before the world started ending in March, we had that we had a group of probably 30 people who were showing up consistently and regularly to practice. And of that group, pretty much everyone stayed with us post total lockdown. So into June, and then we've continued to get those people and add some new people. But social media has been the biggest thing for us. Just having a strong social media presence gives us credibility and allows us to engage with people in a way that entices them to come out and at least try it. And once they try it, they're hooked.
Wow. So social media was the big pull. Was there any word of mouth type of
Yeah.
action, or was there any? I know you guys have practiced at different places. Was there support from like the facilities that you were in, or mostly just people stumbling upon it on Facebook?
I would say it's the vast majority being social media, with a few exceptions. And I'm trying to think of some, but really the people who have kind of there's been cases of number one, social media, and the number two, somebody bringing a friend and that friend sticking, or that friend sticking around for a while and leaving. Um, but again, social media.
Yeah. Well, let's just take three examples and how they came into your club. You had three guys that traveled to Portugal to practice. Who are those three guys, and how did they find out about your club and get involved?
Great question. And okay, so you did see that. I'm just making sure. You did see the three Americans playing for Sporting.
Yeah, yeah, we'll get into that. Let's
Okay,
let's
I'm just want to
let's
double check.
yeah, yeah, I saw that. I saw some highlights.
Great.
How did they find out about the club, and how did they get engaged so strongly?
Those guys have been rock stars. So those three, first one being a guy named Jay Smith, uh, again through social media and also through a mutual friend that we didn't quite know, but that's how he got connected with us. He was one of those first guys to come to the practices in the before time. Um, his background is in baseball. He is from West Michigan, and he was probably one of the top baseball players out of West Michigan for his class. Played a little bit of minor league, developmental league in the Midwest, and was looking for something competitive to do. And I'll say this right now, he's probably the best American-born handball player playing handball right now. Straight face. I will put him against any single person in the United States, or even Europe for that matter, because he went there and he showed what he had, and they were quite impressed.
Well, we'll get into that. I will say that I am skeptical as to the veracity of your statement.
You're entitled to your opinion. And John, you know me too. I'm not some blowhard who doesn't know handball. I've seen handball, and this guy's got it. This guy's got it. He is a little bit on the older side, which isn't ideal, but he's got it.
Yeah.
So the second guy is a gentleman named Chris Lounsbury, and he's a former volleyball player. I guess he still plays a bit, but also too, he was looking for something competitive to do, and he linked up with us early on, prior to the pandemic. And both of those guys have been guys who come to practice every single week, and they show up early. And Chris in particular has a long drive, so the dedication of those guys really translated to their development as players over the past year. And then the third one was Christopher Williams, my not so little brother, who's a lacrosse player and all-star punter. He's the tallest one out of all of us, and very talented player. But the way he got into it was, coming to practice with me.
Oh, he wasn't, he didn't just stumble across the Detroit Handball Twitter feed and said, "Joey, I didn't know you were involved with handball. What? Tell me about it."
That would have been a problem. In fact, he also, to mention him too, he's starting the Grand Rapids team, and they're growing fast. They're doing well out there. So
was there a specific channel that was the most effective in?
I wouldn't say so. I did the shotgun approach and sort of see what came back. I think I should, if I really wanted to, I could probably look back and see Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, which was the best, or LinkedIn. We got Jay through.
Yeah, it might be an interesting thing to one day of practice just say, guys, specifically, how did you find out about our club and decide to go to first practice? That would be very, very interesting to see how that happened. And the second thing, very closely related to the recruiting players, is the critical mass by which you get enough players that if half of them decide not to show up, you can still conduct a practice. I mean, that's phenomenal to have yourself in that situation. Um, when did you first get like a practice where you could say, "Wow, we can scrimmage, we can go 7-on-7, and we're good to go"?
First day. That was, and again too, I mean, I might not even be the best example. Not the first day, I should say. The first, we had like a tryout for the team, and that was one that we really put a lot of resources into getting people there. And so I consider that sort of day one. However, there have been prior to that and subsequently days where there's not so many people. But our first official tryout in January, we had enough people.
Yeah, and one of the things that I found out is like, and I'll go back in ancient history before social media didn't exist. And when I was starting the diplomats in DC, the Washington Post did an article on us in their weekend section. And
Wow.
boom. I mean, it's funny to think about now, like, wow, people read the paper back then. Because there was like 30 guys at our next practice, that just they had read the article in the newspaper, and most of them were expats that we hadn't seen before. But typical to anything, there's an attrition rate. You talk to 10 people, a smaller number sticks, and that varies from program to program, team to team, and that's why you get a little bit ebb and flow. You might have a bunch of guys show up, but somebody sees it, they don't like it, they don't come to the next practice. What's your uh, what's your attrition rate, do you think? I mean, how many guys do you think have stepped on the court at a Detroit handball practice? And then how many guys would you say, you know what, this is my core group that I can count on, and what that number is?
I wouldn't call it an attrition rate in the sense that you're describing because I know what you're talking about. I'd say we have more of a turnover as far as we'll have somebody join, we'll have a group, we'll have maybe 2 or 3 people randomly join at the same time. And then within a few weeks, somebody will move away or somebody will start showing up. So it's almost like a net zero. Like we've just been having, for every one person that leaves, we'll have maybe 1 or 2 people fill their spots. So I can't explain how or why, but generally there haven't been people that have completely fallen off the map. Even if somebody doesn't show up for a while, they still engage with us on social media. They still stay in touch via email or text and let us know that they won't be there or they're taking a break. And I think that's in large part to do with the core group that we do have. Not even the core group, just a group that we have is just a nice group to be around. And so people develop friendships and they, even if you're new and you're a little quiet and you step away, you still feel a sense of like, okay, they show up to practice maybe sporadically. So
What's your financial structure right now? How many people? And this is always a good way of seeing who's for real and who's kind of just checking things out. How many people are like paying dues and paying to go to practice, and that have kind of put some skin in the game, if you will?
we don't have dues, so practices are free.
Okay. So there's no charge for your gym or anything?
So there is, but the one thing I think the closest thing we have to dues is the league we do, and so you pay to register for that.
Okay. And how much was that registration fee?
$50.
So $50. How many people with Detroit signed on for that?
Depends on the session because we've had 3 sessions since August. Enough to have 2 full teams with subs. Enough to have with each session and with a few new people. And especially with this current session, it gets a little tricky because we have a lot of out-of-staters now coming in, and we have Milwaukee playing in the league. So I just don't have that number at my fingertips right now.
But it'd be probably, from what you're saying, it'd probably be something around 20.
Total or per session?
I would say we'll just take like the last session that you had, and I've seen some clips and highlights. It's a league. I guess you got Grand Rapids and Hamtramck and Detroit. So like 3 clubs playing.
We have more than 20. We have more than 20.
Yeah. So you got 20 people willing to put down, $50 to play a couple handball games, right? So
Oh, yeah.
that's something.
That's not nothing.
Yeah, and that's where where the rubber starts to hit the road. When people start having to pay out of pocket, that's a point where somebody, it's like the next step, the next level of commitment, if you will. And I think it's great that you had things set up that people could come in and they could try it out for nothing. And I guess they can even come to practices for nothing. So that's a real positive situation, to have. And I think that's great. In the video too, it looks like you got some younger guys playing. Where are you finding those guys?
Those guys are finding us. Those guys are finding us.
Those guys are what?
Finding us.
Finding you guys. And how are they finding you guys and deciding to show up and play handball?
Social media.
Social media. And how young are some of those players?
So on the younger side of things too, it's a little tricky because those guys, we don't want to put them in a game with grown men, but the youngest guy, 13. And then we do a lot of stuff with the Boys and Girls Club. Those guys as young as 5.
Yeah. So, and to me, that's to me, I think is a real positive thing. And I go back to ancient history, the Boys and Girls Club program they had in LA. I mean, we're talking 80s and 90s,
Yeah.
But they had a bunch of kids come out of that program. And then Atlanta had like a nice program with the Boys and Girls Club. And I think Gary Hines came out of that to some extent, and it was to me, that was the real positive thing, bringing guys that young into the game and discovering it, because I think it's important. There's kind of an age cutoff where there's not an age cutoff to start the game, but I think there's an age cutoff where your potential to be like the next Gary Hines, I think that factors in. And the younger you can get somebody started, the better.
Agreed. The younger, the better.
Yeah. So I thought that's excellent that you're getting some young guys like that involved. And when they're playing against older people, they're gonna learn the game and they're gonna get better.
And that's how it is in Europe too. They don't separate like hard line, like only 5th graders play with 5th graders and 6th graders. Like it's you bring up a 14-year-old who's 6'5" and you let him play with men, and that's how they develop.
Are some of these guys fairly accomplished in basketball or other sports as well?
Yeah. Oh yeah, we got former D1 track player. We have, like I said, Jay, who's a professional baseball player. Who else? We have quite a few.
Yeah.
College players. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about your practice facility. And I've seen that on social media. We even had a little, joke with, God, I can't think of his name, Nicolas Cage and one of his movies, The Masons. But you're playing in a Masonic temple, but it looks like a great facility, very airy, with a big. It just has a good feel to it. It looks like a big place.
Yeah.
It looks like if it's not full length, it's close to full length. How did you get a hold of that facility? and they're not charging you to practice there?
Oh, they are. But they are. Detroit is the land of opportunity. And if you want to do something in the city of Detroit, there's you can make it happen. It's amazing. So that place, I'll give you a little history about it, John. Um, it was built in the 1920s when Detroit was really at their peak, and obviously back in the day, Masonic Temple or the Freemasons, even still today, um, it's really just like a group of people who it's a fraternity for adults. And so Henry Ford, the guy who started Kmart, the guy who people who ran General Motors during World War II, like every notable person that come out of Detroit was pretty much had some connection to that building. So it was quite grandiose when they were building it. But the interesting thing, there's quite a few interesting things about it. Um, they started building it and they finished like the structure, and they were going to go floor by floor, like really. If you look at some of the videos of like the entryway and some of the lower levels, it's breathtaking. But by the time they got to about like the sixth floor, it's a 15-story building. The Great Depression happened, so there's a bunch of floors that are like they stopped working on it in like 1929, and that's how it is today. Like there's a pool like on the same floor that we play, that's just like unfinished, and it's like part of it's cool now because it's like place for music videos and what have you. So that's part of the allure of the building. But the building, John, is the largest Masonic temple on earth, and it has, and prior to the Pentagon being built, it has the most rooms and the most hallways of any building on the planet. So it's a gigantic building, and you can get like you legitimately can get lost walking in there. And so, in order to find our gym, you have to go up to the sixth floor and walk past the Ark of the Covenant. And then by the time you see the hitchhiking ghosts from the haunted mansion, you've gone too far. But it's cool. Once we start doing some things here and having some events, you come down and you will be dragging your jaw all the way to the handball floor.
I had no idea that it was. I mean, that you guys are on the sixth floor.
We're above a like a literal concert hall. It's crazy. And have you heard of this probably isn't your Q zone, but the guy named Jack White, he wrote the song Seven Nation Army, like da, 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 da.
Oh, who hasn't heard that
Right?
song?
So kind of a little bit of a well-known ditty, but the guy's from Detroit, and the building during like the recession and whatnot had fallen on some hard times, and so he kind of came in and like was a huge benefactor for the building. So he's like involved with it quite a bit, and it's just it's a piece of history. And so to kind of take a step back, so to have handball in this genuine American treasure, and to do it, the location of the building itself, John, is like Little Caesars Arena, where the Pistons, the Red Wings play, is a block away.
Oh.
It's in downtown Detroit. It is like prime location. It's as professional a venue as you can get for the sport of handball on this
Well,
hemisphere.
yeah, I would say, from the social media videos and stuff, I'm like, oh, wow, that looks pretty cool. How did you pull that off? I mean, what happened? I'm sorry?
I had to kill a goat, offer sacrifice to the gods.
Okay. Well, how did you get the opportunity to kill the goat? Who did you talk to? How did that get set up? You just walked in and said, we're going to start a handball club. Can we practice in this facility?
Something like that. We thankfully I knew some people, and they're excellent people to work with, and they were just open to it. So I just basically reached out to them, and they were really cool.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about Detroit, the land of opportunity. I have to say, I've never been to Detroit.
You're missing out.
It's not on it's not been on my bucket list, and I don't think I'm alone when I would say Detroit has a bad rap. I've seen different news reports of like blocks of towns, houses having to be demolished because there's nobody living in them. Defend Detroit in that perspective. I mean, already my mind's being changed a little bit, based on this. But is the fact that that Detroit's been hollowed out a little bit? Does that give you guys some opportunity to work in a such a cool looking facility?
It's a big enough place where you've heard of Detroit, and almost everyone on earth has. Not everyone on earth, but like most of the Western world. I mean, even most people have heard of Detroit, right? But
Sure.
it's a small enough place where you can have an impact if you're doing things for the right reasons and being, um, if you're just working hard. Really, if you just work hard in the city of Detroit, you'll be embraced. And if you're really trying to do something special, because like you said, Detroit has such a bad rap. Every all people hear is how bad Detroit is. So there's a little bit of a punk rock fu kind of attitude where,
Chip on your shoulder.
yeah, precisely, like the
Yeah.
Detroit versus everybody. So if you're doing something to help the city, um, you know, just to help the city, yeah, if you're doing something positive,
Yeah.
and something kind of cool, and I think our club has a little bit of a chip on the shoulder as well, which I think aligns well with a lot of Detroit, like just the city itself. Like they'll embrace you, and I think the universe will sort of conspire. At least the universe in Detroit will kind of conspire to help you get things done.
And that was, I was a little bit surprised too. When I did my initial uh, research about, like, just trying to just look at some numbers about, hey, how successful could someone be starting a program in Detroit? And I looked at the numbers in terms of residents, and I'm like, on why hasn't it happened before? A little bit. I mean, because there's a pretty big correlation with the size of the American city and whether there's a handball program there. And so I think you had some advantages there. But I also know that news reports it's like the biggest Arab community uh, in the country, and it's like with some of the players on your team from Arab countries, or as far as the expats, where are they from?
So we have a few Tunisians, a few Habibis as we call them, which is Arabic for sweetheart. So we have a few of those guys. We've had a few um, Saudi players cycle in and out, but um, again, the two Tunisian players are two of the guys who have been like pivotal to helping teach the sport, and they've just been blessings on all fronts. So
There's
not as big of an Arab presence as I would like, but they certainly are represented. But French, German, and quite a few Brazilians. Yeah.
a little surprising there. So, but like you said, the percentage hasn't been overwhelmed with expats. So you guys have done a really great job of
We
reaching
don't
out to the
focus
new
too on
players.
that. I don't want to sound like I'm jingoistic and like xenophobic. Like
Eh,
I'm like it's just how it's shaken out.
Yeah, and I don't want to sound like that either. It's like I think it's great to bring those guys in, and they do an outstanding job of teaching everybody to play. But sometimes it gets to the point where everybody's an expat, and that has a little bit different vibe to it. It's just different. It doesn't not necessarily bad. Maybe
Well, I think about
bad in
this too.
terms of American development,
Yeah.
um, but not in bad in terms of people hanging out, having fun, playing handball.
When it's very interesting too, because in Europe, and you know this, and our friends who are expats and immigrants know this as well, but like you can play meaningful competitive sports, um, not professionally, for your entire life. And so to
Yeah.
come to the US and see that that's not the case, it is quite interesting. And so when they're able to, when that community sort of naturally forms, it's like very cool. It's like it's a special thing. There's no shame in it.
Yeah.
No knocking it at all.
All right. Well, we've covered 3 hurdles: recruiting, critical mass, uh, place to play,
Yeah.
and equipment.
Obliterated that one.
Did equipment? Did you have to just shell out some dollars to get that going?
That was I also had to kill a goat for that one.
Did you get any help from the federation in terms of balls, goals?
No, no, not yet, not yet. I'm sorry. I
You,
didn't.
you should
No,
ask.
not yet.
You should ask.
I,
Uh, yeah, you might be surprised.
I've,
I got a set of goals just for asking. Who knows where they are now in the one in Las Vegas?
You have a
Probably
set of
sitting in.
goals?
They sent us a set of goals. So sometimes it doesn't hurt to ask. They probably say, well, Ryan started a great program in DC. I hope he'll start another one in Las Vegas. And well, sometimes you succeed, sometimes you fail, and you learn from your successes and your failures. One of the challenges with the pandemic is opponents to play. And you guys have had some unique strategies for that in terms of creating opponents right where you're at as opposed to traveling elsewhere. Talk a little bit about the Detroit League that you've set up and how that has helped growth.
Sure. Yeah. And not to, I want to just clarify, like I will ask. I haven't made that good of an effort to ask the Federation for equipment. So I will go and I will do an earnest job of asking. So for the league, yes. It's been a weird year, right? And handball, I mean, even prior to the pandemic, is an even weirder beast because it is very challenging to have competition that is not a weekend warrior middle school volleyball format where you're playing games at 9 a.m. And then by the time you're playing the championship game, you've played 8 games in the span of 24 hours and you're dead and you just want to go home. So that was a problem we were trying to solve even in 2019. And so having our own little intramural league solved that for us. So we were able to divvy the teams up in a way that was competitive but fun and keep the guys invested and interested. And it was an excuse also to just to go a little bit harder and have some meaning when you're playing. That's a big problem I experienced as a player in the United States is when you're practicing and playing for just ad nauseum without really, again, not to take anything away from open nationals, but it just doesn't feel the same as an athlete who's played other sports. And I would venture to bet that most Americans in my shoes would agree that you just don't feel that same feeling when you're practicing for months and months, and then you go and you play 10 games in a weekend. It's just a weird vibe. So wanted to solve that, and I think we've cracked that code at least.
You still envision a Detroit first team,
yep,
like going to Chicago to play in their tournament, going to nationals, going to a West Point tournament, or heading over to Columbus to play in the Schwarzenegger Cup or whatever they call it.
I mean, I'm just in all honesty, like I don't know. We'll have to see, because as of right now, there's just nothing out there. And so it would have to be an interesting proposition for us.
The Chicago tournament's not interesting to you?
Had they scheduled it?
No, I'm just assuming. Yeah, I'm just assuming we have a semi-normal season next year or this year, this fall. Maybe that's too optimistic. I don't know. Vesprem, Hungary, the pandemic's over there. I don't know if you saw the crowd that they had. I mean,
Texas.
What?
And in Florida and Texas.
Yeah, like the pandemic's over. I mean, so and maybe I'm exaggerating a little bit, but at least I'm optimistic that there will be a semi-normal competitive schedule slate this fall and spring. Maybe that's too optimistic, but let's assume that it does happen. I mean, will Detroit be sending a team to Chicago trying to play in other tournaments this year?
I started the club because I want to kind of shift the paradigm of handball. And so if we can find a way to do that while playing in those tournaments, absolutely. And those are fun. I enjoy going to those. But I'll say probably, possibly. I'll say possibly.
All right.
If we can go there and have fun and accomplish what we sort of follow what our values are and do our thing, then yeah.
Okay. Well, you guys were going to host nationals. I mean,
Yeah.
surely you're going to get another shot at that,
Yeah.
Since it got canceled, that,
I hope
would
so.
Detroit be a first choice to have the 2022 nationals at same location, same setup?
I hope so. I really hope so. That'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Again, there hasn't been any word on tournaments yet. I think we're still trying to. I think there's a lot of resources being poured into this World Championship event in August. So we'll see how that shakes out. And I mean, I think we would be open to it. Absolutely, that'd be a ton of fun.
Could you host a tournament at the Masonic temple there?
Yeah. Good.
Yeah, I would think that would be a high interest item. People looking to go somewhere new.
Absolutely, yeah. That would be. I think it's the coolest handball venue on earth, flat out. Sorry, Fez Prem Arena and Flens Arena and where else?
Yeah.
No, it's badass. It's so cool.
All right. Well, I tell you what, let's break up this podcast into two parts. I think we've covered, what you guys have done as a club, and let me be very clear. I am really impressed with what you guys have done as a club.
Can you say that again?
I am very impressed with what you guys have done as a club. Anybody that's taken the time to start a new club can recognize and appreciate what you guys have accomplished. I mean, it kind of goes without saying. And those of you who are listening who have never done it, well, get off your butt and try and start a new club. Maybe contact Joey for some of his suggestions and lessons learned, if you will, as to what to do. That being said, let's talk a little bit in our next podcast. We'll talk a little bit about social media and me making some friends on Twitter, that sort of thing.
This will be a good one. This will be a good one.
So we'll conclude part one here. And for Joey Williams and Detroit Handball, this is John Ryan. Thanks for listening. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast and also check out all the old podcasts, including the ones I did with Joey in the past. Anyway, thanks for listening, and we'll start part two here in a little bit.